Okay, this is the panel on editing. I am Peter John Ross, and this is...
My name is Jason Wang.
Jason is... Hi, Brant. Tell us a little bit about the project you do.
Well, I'm part of Breaking Waves Productions, which is my own little name for now. And right now I'm currently working on my own web series. We just finished... Come on.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah,
Pull
everyone's
up
right
closer. Pull up closer.
You can't hear it. Right now I'm filming an action web series, and we just finished the prelude episode. I'm finishing the edit, and then tomorrow is the wrap party for the cast and crew before I put it out online for everyone to watch. Hopefully it's going to be 3 seasons long. We'll see. Otherwise, I'm kind of newer into the filmmaking world, but really enjoy what I'm doing.
And you're creator of the show?
Yep, wrote it, directed, brought the crew together to do it, and I played just a really small supporting role in it.
So, tell me about your editing process then, about that.
The editing process, there's something I've realized. I come from a professional dancing background, so that's a pretty weird transition going into filmmaking. But I found out there's a lot of things that I brought along with me, because I was also a choreographer. So when I'm doing my edits, the first thing I do is I go and look for the music. Because as an indie filmmaker, I can't pay somebody and be like, hey, why don't you compose something that I throw together? So instead of looking at the footage at all, I go searching for the music of the mood that I want. And once I find it, then I start editing the clips onto it. And there's a couple reasons why I feel this might be the best for an indie filmmaker that doesn't have a lot of budget. Number one, if you find a composed song from someone that, it's free, you can just use it royalty free, they've already gone through the process of pacing that song. So whatever that song was made for, it already has the mood, it already has the timing. You don't have to do anything. So now you just have to start piecing what footage would fit that part of the music. And it's actually a lot easier than you think. And that also takes away a lot of the guesswork that you have to do, and especially for the composer as well. And you'll start to find that just by putting stuff onto it, it already just feels much better because the music was already made for that mood.
Yeah, I find that at a more basic, to break it down for those who might be more like beginners, like me, I always find that, if there's a kind of a metaphor for it, is being the editor is like being the drummer in a band. It's like being Ringo in the Beatles, because it's about pacing, it's about tempo. So in the way that acting can be like a guitar player, cinematographer can be like or acting would be more like the lead singer, cinematography is more like the lead guitar player, the editor is the drummer that gives it the foundation and the rhythm and the pacing to it. It's that dimension of time that not everybody else gets to play with. You can manipulate performance, manipulate camera angles, all through editing, especially in this day and age. Now that we get to this thing that's called non-linear editing, which is basically a fancy way of saying computer-based editing. Editing started off as a linear form, which started with strips of film that were physically cut with scissors and using Scotch tape taped together, spliced together to go from one shot to the next. And even when it got to video, it became going from one VCR to another VCR. Or even back in the day, a reel-to-reel videotape machine to another reel-to-reel videotape machine. So what would happen when you would do, 100 shots and decide, I want to change that second shot? You start it over again. Well, with the computer-based, it's called nonlinear editing because you can it's the difference between a word processor and a typewriter. If you have a typewriter and you type a whole page, you want to change the second word, get on a new sheet of paper, you're typing everything over again. With a word processor, you just move it around. Well, that's what computer-based editing has done, and in the last 20-some years, it has completely changed the creative process of editing. There was, and I'd have to now use the past tense, one holdout against linear editing, which was Steven Spielberg. But just a couple years ago, he did that movie Adventures of Tintin with Peter Jackson, which was all computer generated. So there was no physical film to cut. So he edited on a computer, And the next set of movies were all edited on the computer, much to his editor's extreme happiness for the editor, which is Michael Kahn, who's edited every single Spielberg film except for 2. So he had been wanting to switch to the computer for a long time, and Spielberg was a holdout. Steven Spielberg has also bought 100 million feet of Kodak film and all the chemicals to develop it, and has it in storage just in case it stops being viable for other companies to do it. He can still shoot and develop film. That's how much of a zealot he is for the traditions, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It works for him. But again, a little bit of myself. My name is Peter John Ross. I make my living mostly through editing and some minor effects work. I'm also an indie film director on the side. For me, the process is, if we look at it like this, you'll find out I love me my metaphors. Making movies like building a house. Your script or story idea is the blueprint. The shoot, which is where a lot of people put so much emphasis on the shoot, they think there's some kind of building there. It's nothing but the collection of raw materials for the edit. And then the edit is construction. So if you have that metaphor, can anybody tell me which one is the most important of the 3 then?
Say the edit.
The edit? Is that your vote? You look like you got a vote. Which vote were you going for?
Blueprint.
Blueprint?
I think it's equal.
What?
I think it's equal.
She actually got my trick question. First time ever. First time ever. Of course, I made a video and put it on YouTube explaining this, so she may have cheated. But no, or she's just really clever. We can go with the latter if you like. We'll label you clever then.
It's the latter.
It's the latter, clearly. But if you have that, but to me though, the vantage point of editing means you have to know everything that the writer knows about good stories, script, and everything else. You have to know good acting, you have to know good camera angles, and you have to have an experience with everybody's job to do your job well. That doesn't make it more important, it just gives you a better vantage point of the process of making a movie. So editing is just a fascinating process, because then you can have other layers of responsibility and manipulation that you don't get in any other process. And similar to writing, it's the least number of people working on it at that point. So to me, editing is a thing of, let me get back to you, so you write, produce, and edit. Do you have an aversion to working with an editor, or is it simply budgetary?
I just haven't met somebody that edits the way that I see things, and because I'm more new into, jumping into this field, I see it in my head. There's a saying, I think is called, you shoot like an editor. So as I'm filming what I'm doing, I already know exactly what I wanted, so I just go ahead and film that, and I might have a couple extra cameras rolling in case shit happens, so that I have something to cut to. But it's not that I wouldn't like to have another editor, but I just haven't found that person that talks the way I do, that sees the way I do, and is in that creation process with me as I'm developing. Once I have someone like that, I would love to offset so I can concentrate more on directing it and getting the best possible footage for my editor, so that he doesn't rip his hair out and it's like, well, that doesn't look great, that doesn't look good. So.
Have you ever wanted to be an actor? At Cleveland Academy of Film Acting, anyone can get on the path to a new exciting film career. If you're new to acting, an experienced pro, or somewhere in between, Cleveland Academy is for you. We help place our students in local film projects. Classes are on Wednesday night from 8 to 10 p.m., and your first class is absolutely free. Call 216-323-2393. That's Cleveland Academy of Film Acting.
Admit it. You're the one who killed him. You seduced him, gained his confidence. And then when he wasn't looking, you reached into your purse and without conscience or remorse, you pulled out a gun and shot him. And cut. Curious? Visit theindygathering.com, a film festival, and so much more.
I've done both. I've done things where I'm a writer, director, producer, and editor. But my preference, if I'm directing, I always prefer to get another editor. Matter of fact, one of the people I worked with that was a great experience was right over there is Brant edited a short film for me. Right when I really started to make the decision where I don't want to edit the things I direct by myself. I want that sounding board of somebody else's opinion, especially if they weren't on set. Because one of the things that can happen to you if you're doing all those jobs, and some people like Robert Rodriguez, Kevin Smith, most likely him too, since I've seen some of his stuff, he knows how to do this too, which is you have to divorce yourself from what happened on the shoot and think of the edit as how will the audience view it. And a lot of times you can get too deep into your own material and forget that the audience wasn't there. They don't know how the room was set up, where these people are in relation to each other. If you were the director and you were there on set, you did see that, and you may not be able to erase that part of your memory when looking at the footage to see it the way the viewer will see it. The great Walter Murchie once said, you have to be an ombudsman for the audience. You, as an editor, have to represent how are the viewers going to see what the edit is. This affects where are they in relation to each other. Like, you know, when you show two people in a restaurant, you may be in love with their performances and it's just those close-ups of their beautiful faces, but then what kind of restaurant was it? What kind of lighting? What time of day? What is the, tell us about them, and you could forget all these nuances that may be in the footage, but as an editor, you didn't put in. So to me, always getting that other person's opinion, getting someone who wasn't there to edit the footage, to me it becomes more and more important. It's not that I can't do it, but I would rather collaborate with someone to get that opinion, to get a sounding board. Even if I disagree, I love to have arguments about why should your way be better than my way. I want to have that debate because I care about the movie enough to want to fight for one way or the other. And it's not that I can't be swayed. I want someone to really get into it. There was again, I love my cinema history almost as much. On the original Superman by Richard Donner, he would have knock down, drag out, almost fist fights with his editor. And the editor would quit every other day. And the next day, because they were so mad at each other, he would park in his parking spot to keep like diagonal so that he had quit the day before, and he'd show up going, what are you doing to my footage? He goes, you quit yesterday. He goes, get out of here, I know what I'm doing. They would have these epic, huge fights because they both cared so much about what they were doing. And as much as you would think that didn't work, they did 5 more movies together after that, including all the way through Lethal Weapon 2. So to me, it's those kind of things are essential. It's a good relationship to have with an editor. So let's talk a little bit about technicals. What software do you use when you edit?
I use Final Cut Pro X. And the reason being is because I like how usually all the shots that I have, I've already picked out, so the length of it is exactly the length I want from each angle of where to cut, especially with the filler points. And what I like about it is I can just take one footage or one cut and just place it somewhere else and everything gets pushed aside. So it allows me to manipulate very, very quickly. Whereas a long time ago when I used Adobe Premiere Pro 1.5,
Oh my God.
that was the last time I used Adobe. It was near impossible to do something like that. It was move it to the second video line, shift everything over, drop it in, that didn't work, put it back up, and then it just found the control key. I was in high school. We didn't have YouTube to teach me this crap.
That's very true.
Yeah. So
just so you know, I've been using Premiere for 16 years, and I found that out about 2 years ago. Don't feel bad. YouTube was in existence when I found that out, and I didn't find out until recently. I use primarily Adobe Premiere Pro, but I have cut a feature in Final Cut Pro 6. I cut a feature in Avid. To me, there's no such thing as better or worse when it comes to software. There's your preference. If someone says this is better, they can only describe what's better for themselves. I'm format agnostic. I don't care what the software is, and I don't care if it's Mac or PC. There is no such thing as better or worse in those scenarios. There's better for you, but there's no universal, absolute better. You can try them all and figure out which ones work best for you. I mean, I know heathens that use Sony Vegas to edit professionally and like it. I don't know how, but they do. No, and again, I'm being facetious because it actually is a great piece of software that does things that no other software does. There are benefits and pluses and minuses to each software. Like I said, I've edited all of them. At this point with Adobe Premiere, it practically is Final Cut Pro 7 at this point. Especially on a Mac, its functionality is virtually identical to the old Final Cut. So it doesn't really matter. To me, it's the artist, not the brush, that counts. Knowing what button to press, any idiot can read a manual. Knowing when to cut or why to cut from one shot to another is far more relevant a piece of information to get, in my opinion. But I think my opinion is worth this empty cup. So,
Actually, how many people are here just pure beginners to editing, like never done anything? Okay. What he was saying, like knowing when to cut and such, instead of going to the program, every computer nowadays has a very basic video editor. So whether it be Windows Movie Maker, which I have cut quite a few things on that thing back in the day, or iMovie, which is great, but limiting yourself to those programs just to start really starts testing whether you can figure out the timing of how to cut things. You might not have, or do you want to talk about audio cutting at some point?
yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
But the thing, I think I agree with you completely. It seems like if you want to learn the basics of editing, 95% of what you need to do is already there for free with Windows Movie Maker on the PC or iMovie on the Mac. Adding titles, adding transition, layering music, that is 95% of what every editor will ever do. Period. Everything else is a bell and whistle that, yes, you may start to need it, but how essential is it? 95% of what you'll ever need to do is there for free. If you learn the basics and then you feel you've hit that wall of learning it, then it's time to start paying money for software. Is that what you were kind of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, he's absolutely right about that. Like learning the basics, learning how pacing. More expensive software is not going to make you edit anything any better. Just like you give Steven Spielberg an iPhone and give a beginner a Panavision camera, Spielberg's still going to make a better movie because it has nothing to do with the technology. So let's talk about audio editing then.
Okay. The one thing that I've come to realize as I'm watching, the Hollywood blockbusters to people putting stuff out, and then I'm start to see like why is just someone putting something on YouTube just doesn't quite look right, and I realize it's because we receive a whole lot of information through audio than we do visual, and the beginner editor will probably he's like, oh, this guy's talking, cut. This guy's talking, cut. And then there's that huge jump in audio. So if everyone closed their eyes right now, and I do that, clap, chances are that your brain already visualized something was happening. But if you plug your ears, and I do the exact same thing, you know it's a zipper sound, but your brain doesn't have like the Wilhelm scream, if you guys know what that is. You don't have an already preconception if that's exactly what it sounds like, but you know what a zipper sounds like, you know what that sounds like, and if without visuals, you already know what the hell I'm doing up here.
Introducing SoundForge Pro Mac, a 2-track audio editor reinvented by Mac users for Mac users, redesigned specifically for OS X. SoundForge Pro Mac features an elegantly refined interface. See everything at once, or toggle the view to see only the features you need. Record and edit high-resolution multi-channel audio with speed and precision. Process audio with a wide range of unique and powerful tools. Sony Creative Software now brings its industry-leading expertise and innovative product development philosophy to the Mac. SoundForge Pro Mac enhances your production workflow. It's the ideal complement to any digital audio workstation or non-linear editing environment. Redefining audio editing. SoundForge Pro Mac.
Cleveland Academy for Self-Defense is Northeast Ohio's premier martial arts school. Located on Cleveland's near west side, we teach several martial arts disciplines, specializing in Taekwondo and Hapkido. As taught by Master Ray Such, students of Cleveland Academy learn discipline, formal martial arts training, and real-world self-defense techniques. Classes are available for children and adults. Cleveland Academy for Self-Defense, the home of champions.
Are you a filmmaker looking for the location of your next project? Contact the North Coast Film Commission. With small cities throughout Ohio, we're here to help with your film, television, and commercial productions. With low to no cost permits and locations, we'll help stretch your budget. From our production resources to our talent database, we will show you just what the North Coast has to offer. Visit northcoastfilmcommission.com today.
When you start editing with sound, that's when it gets interesting, because you can make the viewer look at something completely different while something is happening, but because there's the audio there, your brain's like, oh, I already know what's going on. And that's when you get to like really interesting in-depth editing.
Oh, and to go exactly with what you're talking about, the concept of what they call the L cut or J cuts, also called split cuts, split edits. So what happens is if we faced each other, you know, if you did the coverage where we had a camera here and a camera there to show our close-ups, like you said, beginning editors would be this person talking, this person talking, this person talking. Well, what are we missing? The reactions. He could be saying, I'm breaking up with you, and I could be saying, well, I'm so in love with you, don't do that. But the thing is, the reaction to being told I'm breaking up with you or we're getting a divorce, I'm so sorry that we're doing that, though.
It's okay.
But again, that kind of emotional impact, the reaction is half of it. So what he's saying is absolutely true, is on that most basic level of, we could be on him saying, I'm breaking up with, and on the word you could cut to me, and we'd still hear him talking, saying, it's not you, it's me. We could still hear his voice, but seeing the reaction of the other person, like he said, the brain will fill in the blank as to what he looks like continuing to talk. And that consistency of his voice continuing in the middle of the sentence, you cut to the other person just reacting, we're hearing this, but seeing this, the brain fills in the blank. And because the audio is consistent, your brain already fills in. I already know what he looks like talking. We already started there. I need to see this person reacting. And we start to blend all of that together. And you could get complex. That's just with two people. Imagine when you're talking about a table of 4 or 5 people. And the way you edit to reactions, edit to cutaways of maybe a foot tapping to show they're nervous about something. So there's all kinds of ways in editing to where sound, as has always been said, is 50% of the experience of any movie. And that is greatly underestimated. Yes, sir?
I just have a comment about that because I appreciate what you said about music. I mean, music in movies just creates so many different moods, tension and everything. But one of my favorite movies of recent years is No Country for Old Men.
With practically no music.
Practically no music. And the editing is so beautifully done in that movie, and the tension that's created in so many scenes in that movie is just tremendous without music. It's just brilliant, brilliant movie.
Sidebar, you know that's a Coen Brothers movie.
Yes.
You know, have you ever seen their editor? Their editor is a fictitious person that's been nominated for 9 Oscars. Here's what's funny. It's the two of them editing, but they've created a fake name. that's written forwards to their books saying that they're assholes to work with. He's done interviews.
It's classic Coen Brothers.
It is. It's the two of them, and they've been terrified every time since Fargo. They've been nominated for Oscars as this fictitious person. And they said, we have no idea what we're going to do if he ever wins. They have a picture of a hillbilly from the 1800s that when they list his name and he's not there, they have this guy he looks like Duck Dynasty, but it's from the 1800s. That's their editor. Because, and he's the forwards he's written to some of their, like, the screenplay books, they have that guy write the board going, they're talentless hacks, I'm the real genius behind all of this. That's what they write. And I just, every time I see it, because every time there's Oscars and that guy gets nominated, I start laughing because nobody knows. It's like, it's not like they keep it a secret, but they have this joke every year. Yes.
I just love the way you can cheat with sound. Like, say you didn't get a shot of the car driving away, so you show the person's face and put in the sound.
Yeah.
And we buy that the car drives away.
But even then, there's another thing with sound with that, which is something I found on the first feature film I ever did. I found the real power of that, which is also in editing, but also ADR, is that far into post-production. We had a scene where we completely didn't emphasize something, so when we cut away, we added somebody's voice saying, it's like, you know, he just got shot and didn't fall down. We added like a whole line of a plot point that wasn't emphasized enough. We wrote it in editing, got a guy into the sound booth, recorded it, and dropped it in the edit. And it changed everything, at least in my imagination. To go, I fixed a problem, as opposed to, no, reality, it still sucked as a movie. But still, you know, delusions are important when you're in there. Delusions are very, very important.
Kind of going back to what Peter said, how like if you don't have another editor in the room to balance different opinions on, that divorcing you were saying away from like what you actually shot that day to what it is in the editing room. For example, there's a conference scene in my film, and in my head I already saw exactly the way I wanted it, but when I started looking at the footage, I was like, why is this not timing right? I can't get this timing right. This doesn't look right. And it took me, you know, a couple hours just to go away from it, to come back, and was like, oh, but I can extract audio from this recording, from this take, and that recording, and it ended up that you rarely saw any of the person actually speaking, but you already established who these people are in the room. So you can actually save quite a bit of a scene. If it didn't play out the way, just go to the audio and say, okay, what can I do? Who had a good reaction that I can just completely make people visualize what was happening. So, and I think that's where the magic really is.
How many people here are actors? Okay, we'll be a lot nicer.
Yes.
We'll go with consistency.
Consistency, because when I was editing, there was one actress that I had who was always consistent. Her delivery was always exactly the same, which was great for me as an editor. And then I had another actress who kind of felt the moment of each scene, which is great because sometimes you get this awesome performance, but when you go into the editing room, it might not match up too well. And especially if you're doing a multi-camera shoot, having that consistency from your performer makes it much easier to cut, especially if they're still being shown. Where the hell was I going?
We're talking about continuity. Which do you prioritize more, performance over continuity? I think you stayed on topic. I don't know why you did fine.
I don't know.
All right. Basically,
You go.
well, I was actually going to.
lost continuity.
Yeah, we lost continuity for a minute there. No, but it's time to kind of open us up for questions. So, anybody have any questions for us at this point? Yes, sir.
Well, on that same topic, I'm just curious, like, what did you ever have to do creatively in editing when an actor just wasn't consistent in what, like, they were saying here, then they were over here in the next take, and, you know, was there anything creative you ever had to do?
Again, you have to weigh that down with, was it a consistent performance? Like, are these the best takes of that actor streaming it together with this? And the way to cover it would be through cutaways, reactions, other things you could show that are relevant, that mask a little bit of that continuity. But in the end, I think that continuity is lower on the list for me to keeping people interested. I mean, I've found that you're always going to have those people in the audience that are only interested in that continuity, saying it's not perfect, but you know what? What's shocking to me is how if the story is compelling enough, how few people notice.
You two have disrupted my classroom for the last time.
What are you gonna do about it? Spank us?
She can't spank us. It's against the law.
Spanking would be too easy. I want to cause more permanent damage.
And cut. Curious? Visit theindygathering.com, a film festival, and so much more.
In today's world, there is an absolute need to know how to protect yourself. But who has the time or money for lengthy training sessions with techniques you may not remember in a time of need, or which can wind up putting you in even more danger? With Escape and Survive, you will learn effective, easy-to-remember techniques for getting out of dangerous situations. No complicated moves, no expensive, time-consuming training, just common sense self-defense. Book your seminar today at escapeandsurvive.com.
I did a short film where we shot this couple talking in a kitchen. And I didn't realize till I was editing that we have no close-ups of the actress for the first 60 seconds. And so I went back 4 months later and shot her close-ups of those first 60 seconds without the other actor there at all. The lighting was completely different. Her hair was 4 inches taller with brown highlights. She forgot the undershirt. It couldn't have been less consistent, and no one notices.
Wow.
Ever. Until I show them the two stills of the close-up side by side, shot 3 months apart,
Right.
you can't tell, because people didn't care. No one cared because it was actually one of those rare times where I did something that people were more interested in what was being said than anything like that. So that's a rarity for me. I'm somewhat of a failure as a filmmaker, I guess. But so, any other questions? You got one brewing, I can just tell. You got one coming. It's right here. You just gotta spit it out for us.
Well, I also write, and I was wondering what advice would you give, or what do you find in scripts sometimes that just drive you crazy as an editor and be like, advice to screenwriters, don't do this?
Okay, I've got a great one for you. This is one of my favorite and least favorite stories to ever tell. I once saw a movie by a guy I knew where it showed this girl floating on a lake. These arms reach up, grab her and pull her under, and she wakes up in her bed. She then, she's sweating and she's panting. She goes downstairs to the kitchen. Her mom's there. She's like, you okay? She goes, I just had the worst nightmare. I was floating on a lake. These arms reached up and grabbed me and pulled me under. And I was like, thank you. I was so confused it was about all the other dreams you didn't just freaking show me. You know what you could have said? I just had the worst dream. I think I'd have made a connection as to which one you're referring to. The great Samuel L. Jackson once said, talking about Pulp Fiction 20 years ago, he goes, films are a show me medium, not a tell me medium. And in editing, he could have edited it out. As an editor, he could have, even though he shot it that way, he could have edited, I just had the worst dream. Cut. And even though they shot her saying that stupid line, you could have cut it out. As an editor, you could have fixed it. Any other questions? You got something for me? He's got it first, but I'm coming back to you. So think of something.
So when, as an actor, often the director, you do a bunch of different takes, but then the director has a different idea and wants you to act it a little differently. So when that happens, all the prior takes you just end up throwing away, and you just work with the new whatever new idea in that scene he came up with.
I did not throw those takes away when I directed, because I think I made them change it almost 7 different times, and each one I thought was better, but then once I got into the editing, I actually chose some of the in-betweens.
Oh, okay.
So I, as an editor, just never throw away any take unless it's blatantly like out of focus, like you just can't even tell what the hell it is. But no, don't ever throw anything away, because there might be something that might play well with this other actor's 50th take, and then you just have more blocks to piece together.
Okay.
So yeah.
So in that same way, as a director, it's an exploration between you and the actor to find the thing. And then you don't necessarily even piece it together to the edit. Like you said, you could piece from different takes. And I know for myself, one of the things that I've become habitual about using, in the edit, I almost always use parts that are, when they say camera's rolling, and before action. Those few seconds when the actor is not acting. Like for a reaction shot, when they're sitting there going, like, I'm just getting ready for the scene, I'll use that in the movie. Because guess what? They're not acting. And it's genuine and it's real. They could be frustrated. I'm like, I'm using that way over here, because I think when they were so emoting, I was like, no, I want this real moment over here. I'll steal that. I know in my feature film, probably 20% of the movie is the non-acting from those in-between moments for reactions almost every time, because they weren't overthinking, they weren't inside their head. It was like, they're just like thinking about, God, I want to have a cigarette, and that just looked right in that moment. And so never throw anything away, unless you said, like, if it's out of focus or it's unusable for some reason, that's the only reason you trash something.
I'm also curious about both of your personal preferences as far as transitions, like what transitions you use, what you don't like. Like a dissolve, fade in. Some people hate fade in, fade out. Some people hate dissolves. Some people think it's cheesy.
Between cuts, I never really do any fade or cross fades between. I think the one that
Why don't you use it?
I don't know. It doesn't look right to me. If there's any transitions that I use, it's always the fade out and fade in, and usually if it's about to be something insane. Usually if you're about to cut to something else and the next scene is rather intense, I usually just go boom, nothing. I don't use fades or nothing, because I want to shake the audience. Boom, suddenly we're going into something else. If it's like time is about to pass into the next scene, then I would do a fade to black to because to me that just feels right, that we're going to transition much further down the time now, and then now we come back to something else. That's just what feels right to me. I can't technically tell you why that works.
For me, he's hitting exactly on my feeling on the matter too, which is transitions should be significant. I would never use a transition unless you're blatantly trying to take the audience out of that moment and take them somewhere else. A cross dissolve almost always means there's a passage of time or geography. But even then, if you can do it in a straight cut, I would always recommend doing it in a straight cut, unless you really want to emphasize a change. So, I mean, to me, it's like, that's like a curse word. I'll curse like a sailor in conversation, but in a movie, that F-bomb had better be really poignant. The same way about transitions, meaning it better really be significant to use any kind of transition to go from one thing to the next. And I gotta say, going from doing all short films under 10 minutes to a feature, it's shocking how different editing became to get from one place to another. You start learning of things called like a smash cut. Anybody here ever heard of what a smash cut is? That's like, for us, it was a thing of, okay, we went from these guys in a wide shot walking to a close-up of a log falling into a fire. Because it smashed into the scene, into the next scene. That's what transport. It wasn't a transition. It was to cut to something completely different, to shake the audience out and let them know, bam, we are somewhere else. And how many times music starting in one scene and getting you to the next scene is its own transition. It's just audio only. So there's all kinds of things. I mean, editing is truly its own art form. It's unique in the way that it affects a movie. At its most rudimentary, generally fast cutting gets the audience a little bit more excited, sitting on the edge of their seat because I'm being pelted with information, so it makes you sit like that. When the cuts are really slow, you're a little more relaxed, you're more into it, and that's at its most rudimentary. That's at its most root basic. Faster cutting generally means action and heart rate. Slower means relaxed and pay attention to what's going on. And it's powerful. You manipulate the viewer. You are trying to trick people into thinking or feeling something they weren't before they watched it. And editing is just taking everything you know about script and story, actors and performance, cinematography and camera angles, and then using it against the viewer. You want to force them to do something and feel something or think something they weren't. And that is a powerful manipulation. Editing to me is taking all the tricks of everybody's stage and then just using it like a pistol against their head to make them feel something. Like, how hard is it to make someone cry? Shoot a puppy getting hit by a car. Guarantee you're going to have people go,
One take.
one take.
One angle. You don't need to cut to another angle.
You could shoot it with your cell phone. You're going to make people cry or really upset. I'd cry.
Welcome to Movie Outline 3, your first step to a successful screenplay. Movie Outline is powerful screenplay development software for both the amateur and the professional screenwriter, which uses the simple technique of step outlining to build your story, characters, and screenplay scene by scene. With Movie Outline, you can easily plan and customize your story structure, color code acts, rearrange scenes, develop and track characters, format your screenplay, and compare your own story to successful Hollywood movies. Movie Outline is the ultimate writer's tool. Whether you're a novice or professional screenwriter, Movie Outline has a host of features to suit your needs, enabling you to plan your story and present your polished screenplay to a professional standard. Don't miss out on the most powerful screenwriting tool available. Visit www.movieoutline.com to download the free demo today.
When you're editing something right now, my odd preference, and I don't know if it's because of what I'm seeing on cinema, my longer takes before I cut to something is usually 4 seconds, and then my short ones are 2 seconds, maybe down to 1.5 before I cut to a different angle. I don't know why, it feels great to me. So if might be something to pay attention to. I don't know if you ever paid attention
Well,
to how long.
That's an interesting facet in and of itself, which is these kind of preferences change over time. Originally, going back to where we started, when you had to cut physical film and tape it together, shots tended to be longer because of the amount of physical labor involved. And even in the 1980s, starting with music videos and 30-second commercials, faster cuts came through. They were working in short form. Then when computer-based editing in the 1990s kicked in, and faster editing became more possible, but it's also, there's this kind of esoteric discussion of audiences' response to it.
Yes.
Their ability to comprehend more information faster has changed the editorial pacing. Where you watch a movie from the 1970s, it will feel glacial compared to watching even an adult drama today. Shots don't hold for more than 2-3 seconds.
But I think, I mean, just I'm here as a movie buff, basically. And when you see these tremendously fast cuts, which are almost, it's almost a blur.
Yeah.
To me, it's almost a negative that it's so fast.
But how much of that, and I mean, again, I'm getting older myself, and I prefer, lately I've been seeing movies like, I mean, there are a string of great George Clooney, like The American, Michael Clayton, and stuff like that. The other one he did with Cincinnati, what's that? The political one. That actually Ryan Gosling was a star of.
March of Dimes.
March of Ides. They were cut at an editorial pace more like the 1970s. And when I watched them, I liked it. But you're going to find that younger people that are they've been spoon-fed media, meaning short films, movies, TV shows, commercials, music videos, everything is hitting them at a fast rate that they can input it and understand it and comprehend it faster than old farts like you and me.
Yeah.
So even though I agree with you, I feel it's a negative half the time, you can't argue with the success that the audiences are interested, maintaining, and getting something from it.
So one thing I'd like to get better at is editing action sequences. I edited one last year, and it was just soaked with coverage. We had so much coverage. I had so much footage. I didn't really know where to start. I muddled through it, but you know, as somebody who frequently cuts action sequences, you know, do you have a plan of attack? I know you mentioned, you know, you find the right music.
Yeah.
But
but as far as like motion and movement on the screen.
Yeah, and do you have a movie that you look to that said, wow, they really cut it? I mean, that action was really well done. That's something that I aspire to.
I loved Jackie Chan's Police Story 1 and 2.
I like 4.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love the first 2. I hated the third one.
Oh, there was a 4th one. Johnny Woo got me hooked to it, and that had some great action scenes. Yeah, I would say anything with the choreography by Yo Wen Ping or Yen Wo Ping. Danny the Dog got released here as Unleashed. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the Matrix movies, Kill Bill. Watch, first off, the balletic version of choreography, but again, look at how it was shot, how it was edited. It's music of its own. Even when those scenes have no music, a lot of them you'll see they use techno music in some cases because the precision of that, it's pure, visceral, visual storytelling when cutting an action scene like that. You know, for anybody that's interested, I've put out for the PBS show that I do, Friends, we have a car chase with all the raw footage on Vimeo that you can download and edit your own action scene for practice. So even if you don't have footage to cut with, you can get it for free. It's a little editing tutorial you can get for free from the site. You can get a postcard at my table if you want. But yeah, if you want to practice editing, especially action, when you have that much coverage, the biggest thing I recommend is make at least 3 or 4 versions and then create a hybrid of them to make a best of. But it becomes, how do I visually connect these dots? Because shooting the hell out of it isn't always enough, because you still may not have a through line that makes narrative sense.
were you there when they shot it, or they're just throwing the footage at you and you're skimming through?
I was on set, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say my first plan of attack when it comes to cutting an action sequence is, where are your climactic points that fit the character that you want to emphasize first? That's usually what I will do. For my film, there was 2 key moments where the lead actress comes in and has 2 major badass moments. And I'm just like, okay, so I know these are my climactic points. And then and then it's a matter of how to pace that character through the action, like, because you don't want to just be boom, 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 and then you're done. There's always Jackie loves to do this a lot. There's always these moments where he has that badass scene, and then suddenly it stops because he has that nice heroic moment for just that split second before the next wave of people come in. So try to figure out where you can just make the action stop for a second, because that kind of jolts the audience a lot.
It also gives you a chance to feel what
feel
he's feeling.
something.
That's the other thing about it is, it's almost the same as any other scene in the movie, except they're going to be shorter moments of, I want to see their face and know what they're thinking or feeling. So who are we supposed to empathize with? You still need to find those moments where if they're being strained, or if there's something in the action of how they feel. Another example, and a more contemporary one, is like Indiana Jones, any of the 4 movies. You look at his face at those moments when he's getting the crap kicked out of him. Same with Die Hard. The first 3 are the only real Die Hards. I think they made 2 more, but I hope that's a bad rumor. I hope that's a rumor. No one should tell me otherwise, ever. Oh, don't. I'll cry in front of everyone if you tell me there's 2 other Die Hard movies. But basically, there's always that thing where you see their face, and you see and feel what they're going through in that moment. And that, to me, it should always still be about emotion, even if it's strain, stress, jubilation at getting away with something, or even Jackie Chan always think of it's a funny moment. And you just have to cut through to feel it still. But I think we've just run out of time.